Hello everybody, I'm the Display Lady and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me for this sit down video today. So it's a little bit of talking, I'm afraid. So I've got a cuppa, my Ariel mug. Go grab yourself one and let's get into it. Is going to be all about my teaching journey. It's been my most requested video, so I thought I would film it today. It's currently half term here in the UK, so I've got a little bit of time to do a bit of sit down filming, which is not, well, it kind of is what I do, but it's kind of not what I do because I don't think of it like the same thing when I'm vlogging. So anyway, I've got some notes in my very jazzy notebook. So if I'm looking down, I don't know why I would have forgotten about my life, but I've got some notes just in case I do forget. It's best to start at the beginning. However, a bit of a disclaimer before I start. I want to just say that in this video there will be a little bit about my life mingled in, because sometimes the context of my life is important for the story, otherwise I'm going to keep it strictly to school. Another thing is I'm going to try and be as honest as possible about my feelings and reasons that I did certain things. However, I don't like to burn bridges, so I'm not intentionally trying to be kind of catty. I don't agree with, you've left a place, or, you didn't agree with something, you move on. So it's not going to be like, me just saying, oh, I hate that school, or I hated that school, or I hate this, I hate that, because it's not going to do anybody any good. So I'm going to try and be as honest as possible, but at the same time I'm not going to burn any bridges. So if you come for a gossip fest, you're in the wrong place. So let's get started then at the beginning. So I wanted to become a teacher when I was about 14 years old, and the reason why this job occurred to me, other than the fact that no other job was occurring to me, was a teacher that I actually had. I think it's always seems to be, when you ask teachers, another teacher that's inspired them to be a teacher. And I love it when I get comments on my videos saying that, oh, I'm inspiring them. So that means so much to me. It's so lovely to be that person in your life that inspired you. There was actually two teachers in my life that inspired me to be a teacher. And the first one I had as a teacher when I was 14, and she was an RE teacher at my high school, and she was called Mrs. Davis. And I absolutely, and I still to this day love her. And she was so inspiring. She was so quite laid back actually as a teacher, which is not really how I am as a teacher, but she was pretty laid back, and she just made you see things in different ways. And even teaching a subject like RE at a high school, and sorry, I've got a bit of a cold. She made it really interesting. So, I can't really thank her enough. She actually, made me go on to do RE at A level, which I don't think I would have done before. So yeah, Mrs. Davis, thank you if you're watching this. And I do come to meet Mrs. Davis again later in my life, and I will get to that soon. So GCSE I was kind of coasted by, and I did my GCSEs, yada yada yada. I did the EBAC because my school, you had to go on these certain pathways and you had to do certain GCSEs. So I ended up with like the EBAC as it's called, which basically means full sciences, all three, English, language and literature, maths, and then I also had a language which was German, which is kind of hilarious now when I think about it, and a geography I did. You could choose geography or history. So that was the EBAC, in case you don't know what that is. So then I went on to do A level. My same high school had a sixth form, so I just carried on there with my friends and everything, and obviously Mrs. Davis was still there. So I took my RE and my RE GCSE early, so I already had done my AS level. I didn't continue it to A2 because, unfortunately for me, what I didn't realise was A level was a lot harder than GCSE, and I could no longer just kind of coast by like I was sort of doing at GCSE. Truth. And I did really badly in my first year of my A levels. I took English language, English literature, biology, and IT. I'd already done my RE, remember, so I already had an AS level, which wasn't a great one because it was hard. So I basically bombed in my first year, which wasn't good because then when I went to apply for universities, it looked like I'd done really badly. So what I had to do, I still applied for university I wanted to go to, and obviously I had predicted grades, and I was like, oh, rubbish, I better book my ideas up, and I'll explain how I did that in a second. But yeah, so I continued on to AS level, and so I also had a part-time job at a pub at this point, which was kind of good because I had a bit of spending money. I passed my driver's test like when I was 17, so I kind of got my freedom, so I was like gallivanting off all over the place. I'll speed up. Basically, I got a tutor called Mrs. Cobham, and she tutored me for kind of some of my GCSE and then my A levels. And thank God, because I don't think I would have passed. So thank you, Miss Cobham. And she was the second teacher in my life that has inspired me to become a teacher. So thank you so much. You are still an inspiration to me as well. So Miss Cobham was an amazing English teacher, and she tutored me on Sunday nights. Anyway, so because I did really badly in my AS levels, I then had to have an interview at the universities that I'd applied for, because obviously my current grades didn't look anything like my predicted grades. So I had an interview at Loughborough University, and I always wanted to go to a red brick university, which basically means like an old school university, like not an old polytechnic university. If you're from England, you'll kind of know what I mean, but basically I wanted to go to like Leeds uni, but not Leeds Hallam. I don't know why. I kind of just felt like maybe my degree would have had more standing. I don't know if it makes any difference. I'm probably completely wrong. It probably doesn't even matter. But that is what my brain was saying at the time when I was 18, 17 at the time. So anyway, I did well at my interview. They said, it's fine if you get these grades, you're in, it's all good. So anyway, I did get the grades. I did go to Loughborough University to do an English degree. Now, I didn't do an education degree because I wanted to do something that I knew I was quite good at, and I actually ended up doing really well in my English A levels, and I did well at GCSE. I enjoy reading and things like that, so I thought surely it's better to get a degree in a core subject and something that I really enjoy, rather than going to primary and never be able to kind of, well, that's it, I've got a primary degree, what else am I going to do with it? So I kind of decided I was going to do a generic degree. This was under advisement of my mother as well, by the way. You've got to bear all this in mind. And I'm not slating my mother there at all. If it weren't for my mother, I wouldn't even be where I am right now. I would have given up and been a girl, I swear. So yeah, my mum is absolutely my true inspiration, and I love her so much. And without her pushing, I wouldn't be here. So thank you, Mum, if you're watching. Yeah, so I went off to Loughborough. I did really well in my first year. I got a first in my first year. It's a shame it doesn't count in your first year, so bear that in mind. If you're doing an English degree or another degree, it may not even count. So it didn't count, which I'm a bit disappointed with, but I did get first. I hated being away at university. I absolutely hated it. It wasn't for me at all. I just kind of sucked it up and got through the 3 years. It was a real struggle, and I came home most weekends because I just did not like being away from home at all. It just wasn't for me. I also had a boyfriend at the time who became my fiance. We'll get to that. And he, you know, I wanted to see him, I wanted to be with him, and he had a job full time and he had his own flat, so it was very appealing to just kind of spend time with him rather than actually going back to university and being cold and miserable. So anyway, I sucked it up. I got through my 3 years. In my last year of uni, I applied to do my teacher training because I decided that is what I was going to do. So I applied to Sheffield University, which was quite near home. It's like 20 minutes from where I actually live, 25 maybe. So I applied there. I went for the interview and I thought I did pretty well with the interview. I mean, to be fair, when you first come out of uni, I think you think you're really worldly, but you're really not. I was pretty green. I had no idea about anything to do with teaching. I hadn't done a teaching degree. Like, what did I know? I didn't really know anything. I had done like a week's work experience at this point. Maybe that was after. Anyway, long story short, I didn't get on the PGCE. I was like, oh, great, what am I going to do now? So I moved back home and I job searched. I tried to figure out how I was going to make any money. I worked at Asda at the time, which is where I met my now husband and also where I met my fiance. So we all worked at the same place. I'll get to it. So basically, I already had a job at Asda, but it was like really stupidly awful hours, and it was only a seasonal contract. So once the end of August came, I didn't have a job there anymore because I had a seasonal contract. So I would have had a job at Christmas again, because when I was at uni, I used to come back and work at Asda in the holidays. So that's how I kind of made a bit of money. Anyway, so there was a cover supervisor position at my old high school / sixth form, and I thought, well, I'll apply for that then and I'll be able to get some experience. In the meantime, I'd also done odd weeks at a primary school in my village where one of my best friends works, so she got me in there and I did a couple of weeks there just to try and get some experience because, well, I just had nothing at this point. I had a degree, I'd gone straight from college to university and then that was it. So, you know, I didn't really have anything. So I'd done a couple of weeks in primary school and then I went to teach, cover supervisor, at high school. So while I was at high school, I was obviously applying again for my PGCE. This time I applied to Leeds because I realised I wanted to be way close to home and I live really near Leeds. It's the nearest university anyway, so that's where I applied. I didn't apply anywhere else. So you have to apply for December. So I'd applied and I got an interview and I went for my interview in probably January, maybe. I can't remember. And had the interview, passed the interview, all good. So this time I had obviously experience. I've been teaching at a high school. I'd had several weeks at this point in a primary school. So I had the experience and I got accepted. So that was great. I was over the moon. In the meantime, I'd continued to teach at high school where because of my English degree, I was very much a part of the English department and I did a lot of cover for the English department. And, you know, it was pretty tough at high school, I'm not going to lie. The behaviour was hard, especially as like pretty young. I mean, I was only 21 at this point, trying to teach, you know, 16-year-olds. I wasn't that much older than them, really. And, you know, I was really trying to actually teach them because I wanted to practice. It wasn't just like, oh, do what you want, I'm going to sit in a room. No, I was pretty strict. And if any of the people that I taught whilst I was a cover supervisor watch this, I'm sure they will attest to that. I was pretty strict. Yeah, so, I mean, they offered to put me through my PGCE to do secondary, and for a while I was torn. And I didn't like being negative all day, and I felt like that's kind of how it was at high school. Like, I just was negative all the time because it was like, stop doing that, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, no, it's not for me. I don't want to be negative all the time. And so then that's what made me decide to apply for primary. I kind of confirmed. In the February of the year of my cover supervisor job, I had a stroke. I was at work and everything was normal. I was in the office, in the English department, and I just collapsed on the floor. And I was taken to hospital, A&E, my grandma and granddad came and took me and they discharged me. They didn't keep me in. I went back home to my grandma's and I couldn't use my left function had gone. And I was just kind of laid sideways on the sofa. And my mum worked away at the time and she came home to see me, obviously worried, and took me to the doctors. And the doctor sent me to the acute assessment unit and then I was admitted into hospital from there. I was in hospital for over a week while they did tests on my brain, and I had physio to try and regain some of my left side. So if you think sometimes my left side's a bit lazy, that's why it is a bit lazy. And sometimes I randomly will fall over. It's just a weakness that's still kind of there. So anyway, I just kind of was recovering from that for a while. I was off work for a couple of months trying to get my strength back, going to physio and all of that. And I did go back to my job as a cover supervisor, but it really did set my mind to, I am not a high school teacher and I probably never ever will be. I decided I was still going to carry on and do my PGCE. So the next year I went and I was doing my PGCE at Leeds. At the first couple of weeks you kind of go to the university and then you go on to placements. When I got placed in a village called Ackworth, which isn't too far away from where I live. It's about 20 minutes there and 20 minutes back. However, because of my stroke, I wasn't allowed to drive. So I'm so lucky to have such a great family support network, and my granddad drove me to placement and back every day for 5 weeks. I was on placement there. So another person I have to thank for getting where I am. It's, you know, it's a team effort, really is. So thank you, granddad. Yeah, so that was hard. I'm kind of like filling up. And then, so I went back to uni for a bit, and then my second placement came around and they placed me in a school in Doncaster, which is even further away from my house. It's kind of awkward to get to as well. This school's quite rural. And I said to the university, I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, my granddad's got to take me there and back. I can't drive at the moment, because obviously when I filled out all the applications, I was like, yeah, I can drive, it's all good, because it was before everything had happened and I couldn't drive. So they said, well, you have to go there or you have to find yourself another school. So I went to a school that's nearer to my house, and I said, please, can I do a placement here? And they said, yeah. So that was kind of amazing. So thank you to that school. It really helped me out. I'm not going to say my teaching placements were easy, so I'm going to get into them. My first placement was obviously a pretty rural school. The kids were absolutely lovely. Really lovely. No behaviour problems at all. And I taught in a year 5-6 mixed class. Which was fine because it was before December, like December, January time. So the satsiness hadn't started properly. I might need to sneeze. No, I'm fine. And the teacher that I had there was kind of an older gentleman, and he was nice. He kind of wasn't as organised as I like to be. So I think the thing that's frustrating when you're on teaching practice is it's not your way, and the room isn't organised how you would like it, and you know, it's difficult. I'm not gonna lie, being on teaching placement wasn't easy, and I didn't like it. It was just something I had to do to get where I needed to be. And it's a recurring theme in a lot of my life, it would seem. I just did it because I needed to. Yeah, so my first placement was fine, to be honest. And my second placement was a little bit more difficult. I think I was very much in the process, because this was around April time, of trying to find a job, and I had written, I can't even count how many personal statements I had written, and I had sent off to 30 jobs, maybe more, and I'd personalised each one, and I'd tried to do everything I possibly could, and I was not getting an interview at all, and I was getting really frustrated with this, alongside obviously trying to teach and fit in with other people. Like, obviously it's not my way again, it's somebody else's way, and you've got to kind of go with it. And that was difficult for me, because I'm not really I struggle to go with it. I've got better now, obviously in my 7th year of teaching, but I used to struggle to really go with it. So that was something I found hard. And then, yeah, so it took me a really, really long time to even get an interview. I was just applying, I was going to look around schools, I was following all of my tips on my other video that my interview and job application tips video, which I'll link below. Yeah, and eventually I finally got an interview at a school in Bradford. It was my first interview, and it was my only interview. My granddad drove me to the interview because I still couldn't drive, and I got the job there and then. The way that the interview worked, if I can remember, was I went in, I taught a lesson. I think I did a literacy lesson. It was like 20 minutes, half an hour, pretty standard. I can remember the classroom and everything I did it in, and yeah, then I went in for an interview in the office. Oh, I had a written task as well. Yeah, I did. So I had a written task that was, I think it was like a test. like a grammar kind of thing. I didn't find it too difficult because obviously I had an English degree, so it wasn't super hard. So then I had my actual one-to-one interview, and she asked me to wait outside. The head teacher asked me to wait outside while they interviewed somebody else. After that person had left, they called me back in and offered me the job on the spot. I don't think that that's normal, because other jobs I've applied for, they've always sent you away and then given you a call. So, and I'll get back to other jobs I've applied for later in the video. So basically, I got this job in Bradford, and as of around about that time, I was able to drive again. So I got my, I didn't get my license taken off me, obviously, but there's a certain like legality. You have to be fined so long and signed off and stuff. So I'd been signed off after that point, so I could drive again. So my granddad was off the hook. Also during this time, I was revising for my skills tests, and oh my god, was I doing bad at that. Every practice I took of the maths, I couldn't pass to save my life. So these tests were looming towards me like a truck, and I was just like, I'm never going to pass them, and back then you had to do an IT one as well as English and maths. Well, the IT one, I was like, that's fine. I did have an A-level in IT, so I wasn't terrible at that, but the maths, oh my god, I've always really struggled with maths, especially mental maths. I can't do things in my head. I have to write things down. I can't remember numbers. So I was really panicked about that, really thinking, what if I have to do this all in my head? How am I going to do it? You don't have to do it all in your head. You get like a whiteboard. So I was fine in the end because I could write down the numbers, because when the woman repeated the question, I just would forget what she'd said and where I was up to. So anyway, long story short on those, I passed them all first time. And I did them one after the other. I didn't do them on separate days. I just went boom, 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 done. So I finished and I had passed my skills test. So I got QTS and I had some master's credits. So I decided, in my infinite wisdom, that I was going to use the master's credits and carry on at university while I was teaching part-time. No, I wasn't teaching part-time. I was teaching full-time. I was doing my master's part-time. So I decided I was going to carry on with that because I already had some credits and I felt like it was going to be a waste. My granddad really encouraged this, and he paid for me to continue with my master's for my first year. So again, look, I didn't do it on my own. Yeah, because he really wanted me to do it. So he paid for the first year of my master's course. So anyway, this is a long story. Where was I at? Right, so teaching. My first job was at a school in Bradford. It was a really quite deprived area, and I think Ofsted put it, and I kind of felt this was a bit uncouth, as a vast majority were kind of Pakistani heritage children. Which it was, and then there was a lot of children that were EAL there as well. I think most of the children didn't speak English at home. So that was my first school. My first year group was year 3. And when I arrived, the first thing everybody said to me was, oh, you've got a really difficult class. Oh, you've got that class. And I was thinking, oh, great, thanks. Awesome, what a great welcome. Funnily enough, when I went on my induction, one of the teachers that was on my PGCE with me had also got a job at the school, and I didn't really know her that well, but now we're still really good friends and I love her to bits, and I'm so glad that she also had a job there. And yeah, we just kind of like hung out together, and we made kind of really good friends, and I was so happy. And at this first school, I did make some really good friends that I am still friends with now. And I absolutely, like, one of the biggest regrets about leaving that school was leaving those people, because I absolutely love those girls that I made friends with. And I miss them terribly now. I mean, I still see them, but not as much as like every day when I was working with them. So yeah, I made some really good friends at this school. Anyway, so the class were challenging, I will say, but they were nothing compared to like the high school kids I dealt with. So I was thinking, if they think this is a difficult class, this is going to be a doddle. But the problem was with high school, it made me very kind of, I don't want to say angry, so it's not really right, but I'll be honest, I did shout a lot in my first few years of teaching, and now, Well, I barely shout ever, to be honest. The kids kind of know if I'm really, really annoyed. Because I will, I will raise my voice, but I don't do it at all now. To be honest, like, my look says 1,000 words, so I don't really need to shout. But I did in my first year of teaching. I felt like that was the way that I was, you know, controlling behaviour, whatever. And, you know, I'm not saying it was the right approach at all, but anyway, I would say my behaviour management was abrupt and certainly wasn't well reasoned at times. So that's truth there. Anyway, so I forgot to say, of course, that my placement I finished with an outstanding in my teaching practice. So yes, I was strict. However, like, it isn't as bad as I'm kind of making out. And in my NQT year, I kind of felt like I didn't ever know where I was supposed to be or what I was supposed to do. And that was a bit frustrating because me and the other teacher that was also an NQT, we always kept getting in trouble for not being where we needed to be. And to be honest, I think that's more of a communication breakdown than it is kind of our fault. If we both didn't know we were supposed to be somewhere, how can it be like just our fault all the time? Surely it needs to be clearer. And I honestly think NQT induction in most of the schools I've worked in really does need to be more of a priority, and it's something that I really like to get into, like, now I'm further in my career, because I think it is an area that schools really lack, and it's not for want of trying at all. I don't know a school that doesn't want their NQT to be successful. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if all the teachers in the school are just so busy, it's really difficult. And I'll get to how I know that later on in my story. I was in year 3, as I said, and I had a lovely mentor, hi Jane, and I finished my NQT year. I was getting goods and that sort of thing, which, to be honest, I was a bit of a petulant child, to be honest, in my NQT year, I'll be honest. Because I got outstanding in my teaching practice, there kind of was nowhere to go but down for me, and I really struggled with that. I'm a perfectionist, and boy, did I struggle with not getting anything but outstanding, which is really ridiculous because it's completely unattainable to be outstanding all the time. There is no teacher in this world that is outstanding every single day. There's just not. So I was really set up for a fall, and boy did I fall. So this is where the fall began. So really my NQT was quite successful. I'd done everything I kind of needed to do. I was really on top of my data and my assessments, and my observations were going well and all of these things. My school, was struggling in a way. We were kind of due Ofsted, so everything was quite high pressured, and I found that really difficult. So my NQT was really successful in year 3. So then they decided that they were going to move me to year 2. Now, my teaching practice was not in year 2. I'd never taught in Key Stage 1 before. However, the head said, if you want to, go further, it's good to have experience in Key Stage 1, which I totally agree with. So I went. I was like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll do it. So I went into Key Stage 1, year 2, and I had an NQT in the other year 2 class. And the way that the school was structured was you had one lead teacher out of the 2 classes, and they led the whole kind of year group, which means the other teacher and all the TAs were kind of under them. So you would go to like a lead teacher meeting, I think it was on a Monday morning, and get kind of the info to pass back on, because the school was 2 form-entry. That is just how they chose to do it. They did change that later, but that is how it was done. So I had a lot of pressure. I had an NQT in the other class who was lovely, and I'm still friends with her now as well. So she did really well, and she's a Senko now, so I just, she did so well, so I can't have done that badly. But that is when my world kind of started to unravel. So during the summer, after moving from year 3 to year 2, I had moved in with my then fiance, and proceeded 5 weeks later during the summer to leave him, which was by no means an easy decision whatsoever, but it was a decision I made, and a decision that I am now so happy that I made. It was so difficult, and it took me many, many weeks to make that decision, probably months and even longer, probably mentally. It was really difficult, and I'm sure he would thank me now also for making that decision, because he has, you know, his own family and things. So yeah, so I'd left my fiance, I'd moved back in with my mum and dad, well, lucky them, and it was September, and I just moved year groups, and I was a lead teacher, and I had an NQT, and it was just, to be honest, I don't know how I actually even functioned, never mind anything else, but I wasn't functioning very well. I thought I was. At the time, I was very frustrated with things, because I felt like, you know, I'm doing my best. And I was doing my best, but my best wasn't great, clearly. And I was getting kind of like requires improvements. And at one point in my, this is just before Christmas, we had a mock stead. If you know what I'm talking about, you'll know that it's just ridiculous. But we had a mock stead, and I got inadequate in my lesson observation, and that is probably one of the lowest parts of my teaching career. I cried all night, because as you know, as a teacher, you wouldn't be a teacher if you didn't care. And I kind of felt like, oh my God, I don't think I'm doing that badly, you know. I was so frustrated, and I was actually just drowning in my life. So I'm not really surprised that my brain wasn't even functioning to make a coherent lesson. And I was just kind of spiraling at this point, and not knowing whether I wanted to be a teacher anymore. The journey to Bradford from where I live was really, it's not a nice journey. Bradford in itself, and you know, you can disagree with me, but I don't like driving in Bradford. It's kind of a bit crazy. So yeah, it was tough. It was a tough time. I went off then to have an operation on my heart, because they wanted to put a monitor in, because obviously still undergoing is this whole stroke that they didn't know why I had it. So I have scars here. I don't know if you've seen on any of my videos, but I have some scars here from putting in some monitors to monitor my heart and things. So I was going through all this, and then while I was off having my operation, Ofsted came. So I was actually off when Ofsted came, which, to be honest, probably was for the best, because I really wasn't my best. So I think that was probably a really good thing for me. I mean, we'll get back to Ofsted later. Anyway, so the year after, I kept my class and I moved back to year 3, because I was just thinking, this Key Stage 1 lark's not for me. I clearly don't know how it's supposed to be, and I still probably to this day have no idea how Key Stage 1 is supposed to function. I'm going to try and figure it out, but I don't feel like I'm not a Key Stage 1 expert by any means. So yeah, I moved back to year 3, which is kind of my comfort zone at that point, with my class, and things started to get better again. However, at that point, so this is my 3rd year of teaching, and I'm in year 3 with my previous class, and I've decided that I don't want to do the journey to Bradford anymore. I was still quite unhappy with how everything had kind of gone down with the inadequate teaching observations, and I just felt like I just need a fresh start. I need to go, I need to move closer to home, so there's less stress on getting to and from work, yada yada. So I did that. I applied for another job, which, so in my personal life, I had moved back into the house that I left my fiance in, and I bought him out of the house. So the house was my house, and I decided I was going to just live there. And I just started seeing someone new. Well, he wasn't new, I already knew him, he was already a friend, and we'd worked together at Asda, as I said. So we kind of started seeing each other. I moved back into my house during this time period. And he was kind of moving in with me, sort of thing. I mean, we'd known each other like 8 years at this point, so it wasn't just like I'd just met him. We'd known each other a long time, we were friends. So yeah, that was kind of going on as well. And then I don't know if this is any good. I feel like I'm just kind of rambling on, so I'm really sorry if you feel like I'm rambling. So I moved to a school that was literally like 5 minutes in the car from my house. So that was kind of like, yeah. So I went for the interview at this school, and the way that they did the interview was there was about 5 of us, and we had like a rotation. So there was kind of like a room with lunch in, which did later become my classroom for that rest of the year. And we went to a little office and we had to do a marking task, which was you had to level the piece of work without any level descriptors back when it was levels, and mark it using their marking system code, which you got given. So we did that. I think there was a couple of pieces of work and you had a time limit. And then there was the one-to-one interview, and there was the lesson that I taught. At this point, my lesson teaching was on a massive low. I felt lost. I was so lost as a teacher. I had no idea what made a good lesson anymore. The school that I was leaving had implemented so many things I didn't understand. I was lost, big time lost. And I hated that. I hated not knowing whether what I was doing was right, how to make a good lesson. I hated all of that. And I can remember just feeling so frustrated with teaching and really being ready to quit. So this was kind of like right, I'll try and move schools and hope that this helps the situation. So that is what I did. So after everybody had their interviews, we were all sat in this room, and literally they called out and the first person got the job. So they called my name, which was amazing because there was quite a lot of other candidates in the room. So they called me out and the head teacher offered me the job, and I took the job. So I started, so this was in November, so I'd missed the deadline for handing my notice in. So as a teacher, you have to hand your notice in, you have to give a half term's worth of notice. And I couldn't do that before December because this was like late November. I got offered the job like the beginning of December. So I had to leave at Easter. So I handed my notice in, ready to leave at Easter. So I did that and moved to this other school where I kind of supported in year 5. I should mention as well that while I was there on one of my kind of transition days before I left my other job, I collapsed on the floor and got rushed to hospital. It was more of a sickness thing. It wasn't to do with my heart, but obviously it was a bit of a worry, and the head was like not happy with my absence record, and I was like, well, I have had a couple of operations. I've not just had a cold. So she was kind of okay with that once I explained all of the situation. Because they checked like your last 2 years, so I'd had like a couple of operations, so I had a couple of weeks off. There was not really much I could do about it. I'm not really off very often for colds and things like that. I have to be pretty ill. So I moved to this other school, and so at my first school I had really good vibes, even though I didn't really sort of understand where the SLT were taking the school. I didn't really get it. The way that they wanted to do their objectives and the things they wanted to use, I didn't understand it properly, and therefore I didn't do like my best or what they wanted. Basically, I couldn't give them what they wanted because I didn't know what it was. And at this school, I really did not get good vibes, and this is the truth. I struggled. There was some lovely people there though that really kept me going, especially like I say my TA. We didn't really have class TAs. There was a lot of SEN children, and they had like one-to-ones, but a couple of the ladies that were one-to-ones were just amazing, and they really kept me going. But generally I was still kind of struggling with teaching, and I was kind of getting in trouble for silly things, like you sit on your chair a lot, and it was a bit like, I teach year 3, they're on the carpet. Well, this was after. I've skipped. So yeah, I got kind of bad vibes. So that was from April to July, and I was teaching in year 5, just kind of helping the year 5 teacher out because she had a really, really big group of kids. So I, and her, what was a partner teacher, I think had gone on maternity leave. So I stepped in to take some of the kids. Obviously I'd never taught in year 5, so I was kind of, winging it a little bit. And then the next year I got put in year 3. And that's when I seemed to be in the office getting told off for something every week started. And it was really silly things, like I said, like, you're sitting on your chair, yeah, so I don't understand, I'm kind of still ill. I have a heart condition. I have year 3 that's sat on the carpet. I don't feel like I should have to justify whether I'm sat on a chair and teaching or whether I'm standing up and teaching. So I think I really didn't get a good vibe, and I was still not in a good place, so I probably wasn't the greatest, employee in the world either. I'm not going to say it's all the school's fault, because that's not true. It still was my fault. It was still me not having the right mental attitude, and to be honest, at this point I was really ready to give in teaching. I was really, no, this is just not for me. Like, if I can't just sit down when I want to sit down, it's ridiculous. So I was just kind of over it at this point, and I'd really kind of checked out. One of the assistant heads really tried to help me out and get my teaching kind of back on track, because to be fair, I was a bad teacher. Well, not a bad teacher, but I wasn't as prepared, and it's not that, I don't know, how can I explain? I just wasn't willing to put all my life into it at this point. I was just kind of over it, and I was just thinking, what else can I do? And I applied for another job out of teaching. I applied for a job as a trainer with the council, my local council. And I went on 2 interviews for that, and I got down to the last 2 people and I didn't get the job. However, had I got that job, I would not be in teaching right now. I would have left teaching. So that is how close I came to not being a teacher anymore. So the struggle is real, guys. You will have your moments. Probably my 2nd, 3rd and 4th year of teaching were the hardest. I don't think my NQT year and my trainee year were half as hard as that. It just seemed to get harder and harder, and my mental health was really bad. It was not in a good place. And yeah, so I didn't get the job, and then I was looking for other jobs I can apply for, because obviously I now don't have experience in anything else because I've done teaching all my life. So I was kind of lost. And one of the girls that I did my PGCE with, she texted me and said, do you want to meet for coffee? So I said, yes, I do want to meet for coffee. So we went and met for coffee, and she worked at a school in Barnsley. And she had worked at a school in Leeds previously. Since we qualified as teachers, obviously we were in the same classes at university for our PGCE, so I didn't know her. I hadn't really spent much time with her since then. Obviously, I work in Bradford, and as a teacher, you don't have a lot of time. So, yeah, we were pretty good friends at university. And, yeah, so I met her, and I was really low, like really bad. I also had a child in my class that was really challenging in terms of his behaviour. I don't want to say too much, but it was pretty physical. I'll give you a few examples. Kind of being punched in the face, headbutted, things thrown at me and the other children. So, it was really difficult. I was in a really, really, really bad place. So I met her, and she said, why don't you come and see my school? Give it a try. Come and have a look round, see what you think. I can get you a job at my school. Do that. She really didn't want me to give up, and if it weren't for her, I definitely wouldn't be teaching right now. So I went and looked around the school. I met the head teacher, my current head teacher, and she showed me around, and the instant I walked in, so there's this thing about our school that everyone says it's like magic, and it really was. When I walked through the door and I walked around the school, I could feel something different about this school. There was something special about it, and I felt this magic, and I knew that this was the school for me. And so I didn't really have an interview. I applied, I sent a job application in, and obviously I'd met the head and had an informal kind of discussion, and she offered me a job, and it was in year 4, which was great, because I thought, well, 3 and 4 are quite similar, so that suits me. just fine. So I went there in the September, and this is now my 5th year of teaching, and I'm in year 4, and I had the school's a pretty tough area. The school I work in now, so it's still the same school I work in now, and the area is, the kids are pretty challenging in our area. It's not like, we don't have behaviour issues. We have behaviour issues, but the kids are lovely, and most of them watch my videos, so I do have to be careful what I say. But I loved year 4, I loved my class. I have some of them back now, so that's really nice. I think I'm going to be pretty sad when this lot leave. But yeah, so I taught in year 4, and I was just like a regular teacher. During that year, Gareth and I decided, we got married that year, and we decided that we wanted to go and see the world. So I applied for, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. To teach abroad anyway, in America, for a 2-year exchange, 2-year exchange program. So I applied for that, I went to London for my interview. I got a job there, I resigned at my school, and it all kind of fell apart, and it was really difficult. And it was a really hard time for me and Gareth, because we'd literally packed up everything, we were ready to move. It's like June. I'd handed my notice in, everything was kind of going along, and then it all kind of fell through and it kind of spiraled down around us. I look now and I think it probably wasn't meant to happen. We weren't meant to go to America, we were meant to stay here. But yeah, it's kind of I feel like I would have regretted it if I hadn't tried to go and do it, but having the fact that I tried and it didn't work out makes it a little bit better for me, I think, in terms of my own personal mental progression. I don't know. So yeah, we did that, and then I had to go and beg basically for my job back, which didn't take much begging. So thank you to my head teacher who gave me a job. She'd already recruited for my job and would have possibly included an assistant headship, but that's all speculation, of course. So they'd basically replaced my year 4 job with another teacher, because I had, essentially handed my notice in and I was leaving. So I got put with the teacher that invited me to teach at the school, my friend, and in year 6. So we kind of team taught in year 6. There was 31 kids, so it's pretty nice. And then we split the class between us, for focus group for SATs. The SATs went really well. This is last year. The SATs went really well. We did pretty good. The kids did really well. And off they trotted to high school. In the meantime, the assistant head teacher that was in my year 4 class left, and they advertised for a new assistant head teacher at my school. I did not see the advertisement because I wasn't really looking for a job, so I don't really look on job adverts when I'm not looking for a job. So yeah, I didn't apply for it, which was a real shame. But it wasn't a shame in the sense that we got 2 new assistant heads. And one of them went to year 4 and the other one stayed in year 5, 6 with myself and the other teacher. So it's really complicated. So after that teacher left, the year 4 teacher that took my job, I got his I got his assessment leadership. So I am an assessment leader, and I'm on SLT, but I'm not an assistant head. So that basically means that I kind of have some of the responsibility of assistant head, but not the full responsibility. So I did that last year, and I've done that this year. So I've been the assessment leader now at my school for 2 years. And at the end of last year, I applied to be an SLE because I had been on a course with the one of the assistant heads for The Power of Reading, which is an amazing course, and I would recommend it to anybody. So we went on that together, and we applied to be reading SLEs, which is like a senior leader in education in reading. So that's like really exciting. And I got the position, and the man and the woman that interviewed me were very complimentary. And, you know, I had all my data there, I had all my facts, all my info. And yeah, and, you know, I like to say I know my stuff these days. So yeah, so I am an SLE for reading, and I've, you know, got my first deployment coming up. So that's exciting. Now SATs are finished, I can go to other schools and impact them, and I really enjoy like our school. We have sister schools. If you watch my blog, you'll know I talk about the sister schools, 2 sister schools, and then our school. And yeah, I enjoy working with them and the other teachers at those schools. So yeah, it's been really great, and I'm really loving my position at the moment as kind of teacher, but with, you know, bits of responsibility. So that's been really nice the last few years to do that. I also last year mentored 2 NQTs. I started off mentoring them, and then when the new assistant heads came, they took over the mentoring, because I was kind of like bogged down in SATs by that point, and they had more time really. Yeah, so that was a shame. So I did mentor 2 NQTs last year. And they're both lovely. I really love them both. Hi, Ella. I don't know if Ellie watches, but yeah, them were 2 NQTs. And Ellie is actually the one that has helped me make my tips list for my NQT video, which I'll be shooting later. So yes, thank you, Ellie, for helping me with my tips video. They're obviously both RQTs at the minute, so yeah. What I was going to say, I can't remember where I'm up to in my story. Right, so then this year, in my 7th year of teaching, and I teach in the 5-6 mixed class. The Sarah, I'm just going to say her name, Sarah, who is the assistant head, came and took over from Natalie, who went off on maternity leave, and she is the assistant head and first leader of 5-6. Sarah, not Natalie. And yeah, so I really love working with Sarah. She's, well, I'll say she's my work wife, and the kids have kind of gotten used to us saying that now. At first it was a bit like, oh, now we're totally okay with it. So yeah, and that's kind of this year. I just want to say how much I really love my current school, and honestly I don't think that I would be a teacher without my current school. And it really is important to find a school that really suits you and that you fit with, and it all gels together, because it doesn't just happen, and it isn't just like any school is the right school. So if you're unhappy, I would really consider trying to find a school where you could be happy, because it's not necessarily just teaching sometimes. And I'm not saying it isn't teaching, I'm saying it might not be. So, you know, eventually I've gotten to a job and a place where I am happy most of the time. And I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not easy. It's not an easy job. But it's, you know, things have got better for me, and it can get better if you're in a bad place too. My teaching journey hasn't been easy, but I'm so glad I stuck with it now. You know, now I'm at this school, I totally get how they want me to teach, and my observations go well. And, you know, I've got that feeling of success, and I'm a happy teacher now. And, you know, I love the kids, and I love the school. I love the whole community feel around the school, and I wouldn't want to teach anywhere else. You know, that may change in my life, but right now I don't want to teach anywhere else. I love it where I am. And yeah, so my teacher journey is kind of, when I think about it, being quite a difficult one. But yeah, I mean, the last couple of years have really been stabilizing, and I really feel like I've come into my own as a teacher. I'm really, you know, the teacher that I want to be now, and I've really grown going through all that. I wouldn't be the teacher I am today if I hadn't gone through those really hard times, and those times where I've really questioned and really worked hard and felt like I was really working hard, but kind of not getting anywhere, like on this kind of treadmill. And yeah, it's nice to kind of come out of the other side of that now at my current school. And you know, the last couple of years have really been successful, and I've really grown as a teacher and as a person during this time. So you know, I wouldn't take any of it back, even though it's been really difficult. So yeah, I mean, if you are feeling a little bit lost, don't despair. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Next year, looking to my 8th year of teaching, I've applied for an assistant headship at my school. I applied last week and the closing date was Friday, so I haven't officially heard anything. So we'll see. There'll be maybe an update on my vlogs with my teacher life and what's happening with it. But at the minute, I'm happy. You know, I've got my little class, and we'll see if there's a new, you know, page in the story coming up as an assistant head. So yeah, that is kind of it, I think, unless I've totally missed something out. I'm not sure, but it's nearly an hour long, this video, so I'm gonna have to try and edit some of this out. Yeah, so this is my teaching journey. Thank you very much for watching and listening to me ramble on all this time. If you have any questions about anything I've said or not said, if you leave them in a comment, I will get back to you. If you have any questions about, you know, interviews or whatever, again, just leave me a comment. It's fine, and I'll get back to you. Thank you very much for, you know, all your support you give me on my channel. It's been amazing since I started it, and I really appreciate all the support and just a like on the video. It just means so much, and it's I'm tearing up again. Yeah, it's been so much more rewarding than I thought it was going to be starting this channel, and I'm so glad that I did it, and I intend to keep it up, which is no mean feat when you're teaching. And next year, I'm sure I'm going to struggle if I do get an assistant headship, because at our school, the assistant heads also teach full-time, so it's going to be interesting. But yeah, thank you, and please subscribe if you haven't already. I know there's a lot of you out there that watch that haven't subscribed, so please subscribe. It really would mean a lot to me, and yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on my NQT. I will catch you on my NQT tips video, which is coming later this week. Bye!